Hi there, listeners of Illusion. Before we start today, I'd just like to let you know that we finally have a Patreon account set up. So if you want to support the show financially for as little as $1 a month, then go to patreon.com/nightmarepod. And I promise you, every single penny goes back into the show. At the moment, we're saving for some new microphones so we can bring you the best podcast we possibly can. Right, now that's out of the way, on with the podcast. Welcome, listeners of Illusion, to Temporal Discussion, the episode-by-episode retrospective podcast on everybody's favourite kids' TV show, Nightmare. I'm Martin Harder, and remember, work hard, play harder.
And I'm Martin O'Doney, and remember, this was recorded in November. I thought that deserved a bigger laugh than that. I thought that was really clever, that. Can't win with you.
I'll add in a bigger laugh for you. How's that?
just play a recording of an audience going.
Today we're looking at Series 1, Episode 8, which is the very last episode of Series 1. It's gone quite fast, really, hasn't it? You know, time flies,
as the Romans would say.
It's actually been nearly 2 months since we started, but it feels a hell of a lot quicker, doesn't it?
This episode was first broadcast on October the 26th, 1987, and the Bee Gees were still winning the charts with You Win Again, and The Witches of Eastwick would continue to bewitch the cinema-going public into giving it another week at number 1. And so without further ado, let's crack on with the show.
Welcome, watchers of illusion, to the castle of confusion. A quest is now in progress, so here's a progress report. Young Richard and his Yorkshiremen are well into our dungeon game, if game it is, for who can say when traps like this lurk on the way. But still in dungeons, friends may dwell, a jester who may serve you well, especially when monsters prowl or hostile monks with language foul. And so, with thanks to folly's wit, our team press onwards, fighting fit. And now time turns, the fire burns, time out is gone, the quest is on.
Where am I?
You're in a long corridor with 2 doors on your left, 2 on your right, and 1 straight in front of you.
Yeah.
But on the doors on the left and the doors on the right, there are swords coming out of them at intervals.
We begin right where we left off in the previous episode, of course, with Richard emerging into the corridor of spears. We'd like to say that they make short work of this very simple timing puzzle, but we would be lying. The team make awfully heavy weather of the spears here. The problem seems to be their nerve keeps failing them just at the moment they're committing to walking. This is another one of those moments where this team are bellowing a little bit too much, which suggests the tension is getting to them. If you thought Simon's advisors could be a bit confusing a few episodes back, you really need to check this bunch out.
Right, Richard, yeah, could you take 1 step forward, please?
Small.
Is that okay? Right, another one. Stop now. Right, another one. Small. Stop now.
Yes.
Still got a bit more space, but you can see.
Hurry up.
Yeah. Right, another step forward. Small. Right, and
That's
another
enough.
one.
No.
Yes. One more, come on.
Hurry up, Val.
Hold on. Right, another small step.
Very small.
Right, stop. Right, walk. No, stop. Walk. No, stop. Walk. Stop there. Stop. Come back.
Team, your life force energy is healthy, but you're wasting it.
Right, go. Walk fast. Move quickly.
Go.
Right, stop. Right, walk. It doesn't seem to be going.
Walk a bit.
Walk a bit. Stop. Walk.
No.
Stop. Right, keep going.
This isn't the only example of bad manoeuvring from them, is it, though? There are times later on, which we'll get to, then they seem to have trouble getting through a door.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Given that we are talking about just a really basic walk, stop, walk again, stop, walk again, and you're out, it is interesting that Richard only just escapes the chamber with his life.
Walk. That's it.
Where am I? You're in a large grey room with a flight of steps in front of you. There's also a table platform with some key objects on, and there's a door on the right-hand wall.
We're in the level 2 clue room again. Like Danny's team before them, Richard's advisors seem to have an aversion to banisters. They do manage to guide Richard down the stairs a little less awkwardly, though. And as he approaches the table, Richard can see a bunch of grapes, a bar of gold, a bell, and that key.
This is the last time we will have to endure Casper the Key until very late in season 2. Why they wanted to bring him back at the end of season 2, I don't know, but we will cross that bridge when we come to it.
Casper says that Merlin keeps leaving him out of earshot. Gee, I wonder why.
It is a bit of an open goal, that line, isn't it? Tell us what the team do, Mr. H.
So, of course, they take Casper with them, and after a brief disagreement, they also take the bell, which has the word fire engraved on it. They then leave the chamber. Nice and quick.
Right, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep
To
going.
the right.
Keep
Come
going.
on, Richard,
Quickly.
come on.
Right, now walk forward.
Run.
Where am I?
You're in a large room with 4 doors. 2 have got portcullises on them. One's got a fire exit name above it, and one's got a lock in it.
They wind up in the variant 4-door chamber again.
At least it's not the moving keyhole this time, though.
Yeah, that helps. The moving keyhole trick, one of the problems it had was the silly sound effect they used for when the lock was moving around. But it is a deviation from the level 2 map, isn't it? We got 2 portcullises either side, so it might just as well be 2 blank walls there for all the difference they make. Fire exits, and we always know what fire exits is, a very unsubtle hint about what sort of thing you can expect on the other side. And then there is, of course, the door that's locked.
I do wonder, though, if they had gone through the fire exit, would they have had some use for the bell? Because, you know, slight spoilers, they don't actually use the bell at all.
We're going to have quite a discussion about that later on in the episode, I think, because there's a lot of things we need to point to emphasise some extremely ruthless editing. Casper unlocks the door predictably, and also predictably, he's very insufferable about it again.
Easy, easy, easy. How about finding me something a bit more challenging? A key could get bored doing this sort of thing.
Now walk forward.
Richard.
Right up above your head. Right up.
That's
That's
right.
better. Now walk forward. Keep going. You can put the key down. Where am I?
Hello, Richard.
Hello.
You're in a room, looks like, well, there's lots of books on the
Study.
shelves.
Study.
A study with a grand throne in the middle.
We get a variation at last in the Hall of Folly in the next room. No block puzzle, thankfully. And instead we seem to have some rather charming and today rather quaint mouse pointer technology, where an M symbol that's clearly been added on the computer is right above the central door. Treguard tells the team that he cannot offer them any advice, except that this is a place of deep magic. Do I find myself once again just finding that Treguard's tone is just a little bit pleased? Takes just a little bit of pleasure in telling them, you're on your own.
Yeah, I did like that. But the problem is they're not on their own, are they?
It would actually be nice if they were on their own, because that would mean that Casper's nowhere to be seen or heard.
But what does essentially happen in this scene is that Casper takes on the role of Treguard briefly and does exactly the kind of things Treguard would do, including giving them clues.
Answering the riddle for them.
Yep. Casper tells them that any of them can command the key and it will listen to them. They sort of listen to what Casper's saying. They do understand that somebody has to command the key, but they don't seem to understand that it can be one of the advisors, because they just keep telling Richard to tell it to do things.
I will say, in fairness, the directions they're getting are slightly unclear. But, you know, what does Casper say? Tell the key to move. So they tell it to say to it, move. That's a perfectly reasonable response, but of course it doesn't actually do anything. They need to give it specific directions, but Casper hasn't said that. I think Casper's kind of being an obstruction here rather than a help.
Key. Tell it to move, Richard. Say key to move. Say it.
Key move.
Say key move.
You better tell it where you want to move it to.
To the chair.
To the chair.
To the chair.
Move to the chair.
Hey,
Key move to the chair.
tell it to move up or down. I don't think it knows where the chair is.
Up.
Up.
Right, stop. 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 That's it. Now.
Right.
Go. Right.
Right.
Stop.
Stop.
Right, backwards.
Who called? Oh, it's a dungeoneer. How great. I thought they'd stop sending them after what happened to the last ones.
I like that line there. I didn't think they'd send any more after what happened to the last one. I do have a slight theory about this bit. Merlin's talking, doing his shtick, and then he goes, now, What was I supposed to do? That's perfectly in character for Merlin, but speaking as someone with some acting experience, the way that he does it suggests to me that he actually forgot his lines.
Well, I don't know if I suppose we'll ever know. I very much doubt that Tim Child can tell us. It's perfectly consistent with Merlin's character, so we'll just let it go. You might very well be right. Merlin tells Simon that in order to earn some magic, he shall have to answer. Drum roll, please. The first riddle is, ice and snow will make you cold, centuries will make you old, fire and water will make steam, but how on earth do you make green? I really like this puzzle entirely for personal reasons, not because it's a particularly good riddle or anything, but when I was in, I think in my second year at primary school, the teacher actually gave us mixtures of paint and got us to mix them to create new colours with them, and the ones she gave me were yellow and blue, and the pictures that I made with the green paint that I created actually was put up on the wall. And I have a bloody clue why, because I have absolutely no visual artistic talent whatsoever. Absolutely useless at painting and artwork.
You sure it wasn't put up on the wall under a heading that said, "At least you tried"?
I wasn't going to mention that bit. Mum and my dad came to see it for parents' evening a few days. They were so proud of me. So when there's a riddle on Nightmare about mixing blue and yellow into green, oh, my heart rate. It still does today.
The team got this one right. What rolls but is not round, tells the score but speaks no sound.
They did make heavy weather of this as well, didn't they?
Yeah.
One of the things I have to say, just indulging slightly immature side of the storyline, you notice the gesture that Merlin makes when he's saying what rolls. It's very clearly the whack gesture.
How do you mind rolling a dice without looking like you're doing
That's his problem, not mine. I've got a colleague in work, whenever he's doing that to people to make fun of them, he always says, "Are these your dice?" That was the answer to the riddle, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, in case you haven't watched it. The answer is dice. You roll a dice and it gives you numbers.
They did have to have a big hint from Casper.
Hey, Richard.
Yeah.
Think of something that's used in a game.
Yeah, as I say, they did make rather heavy weather of this.
And the third and final riddle is...
As the eagle is to the sparrow, so is the great bird of legend to the condor. Only his memory survives, but can you remember his name? It seems his memory doesn't survive.
I have to admit, I had no idea.
I did know. Can't remember whether I knew at the time that the show was first broadcast. I definitely knew shortly afterwards because my brother, can't remember what the toy line was called, but there was he got a load of Monster cards, sort of for playing games like Top Trumps with, and they came with model toys as well sometimes. And one of the monsters that appeared on the cards was The Rock.
Yeah, we'd just like to add that it's Rock as in R-O-C. I don't think Dwayne Johnson was particularly well known at that time. Dwayne Johnson coming in just like choke slamming Merlin.
If you smell what The Rock is cooking.
You talk to my agent before you use my name in a riddle. So anyway, as you say, not entirely surprising they didn't get this one and they went for something more obvious like the dragon.
Yeah, they were arguing between dragon and dove and eventually they decided dragon.
2 is the score and Merlin gives Richard the spell Shield. This is where we have to start our discussion about ruthless editing. It's very clear after this point that the episode is very ruthlessly cut up because it's the last episode of the season and it's clearly going to overrun. This is one of the first clues here. They're given a spell called Shield, and it is never referred to again. As a rule, when you get a spell, you use it on the level that you're on. Don't happen. My suspicion is that at some point in the next 1 or 2 chambers, they use the Shield spell to get past it, but we don't see it. Also, listen carefully to what Merlin says. You will have to overcome Mogdred in order that you may yet meet me again. The final scene in level 3, slight spoiler here, is a chamber in which Merlin usually appears in level 3 throughout season 2. Between now and that point, Merlin does not appear. In fact, this is Merlin's last moment of season 1, is the one we're getting right here. That would suggest if they had to meet Mogdred first, they must have had a meeting with him, and that scene was also cut out. Another clue that the stuff has been cut out, it will show up immediately on the other side of the door from here.
And now, farewell. And good luck.
Put Casper on the floor, please. Right.
Gently,
Right, could you take a side step to the left, So you don't tread on him.
Right, so you don't tread on him. Right, now could you walk forward? Right, stop. Right, could you turn left? Left. That's it, and walk forward.
Go forward.
Walk forward, Richard.
Where am I? You're in a cavern with a well and some food, I think, on the well, and a guard guarding the well and the food.
Hold, intruder!
We wound up in the wellway to level 3, which is come very quickly.
Yes, now this is before we describe the scene itself. This is the next clue that stuff has been cut out. Merlin usually appears around the midway point of level 2, around the midway point of an overall completed quest. But the very next chamber after they leave Merlin's study is the Wellway. Therefore, I think at least 2, possibly even 3 scenes have been cut out. And without those scenes, the quest has lost all its coherence. His spell has, there's no point for it. One of the clue objects, the bell, it might not have had any particular use. He's never used it, as far as we can see. I don't know if he's still carrying it or not. So again, something's missing. Richard is greeted by Gibbet, the Celtic guard.
The password now, or you perish.
This is Gibbet's second appearance in the dungeon. It's also his last. And just like his first appearance, it's a brief one as well. Now, I've actually got to say, proportionally, Gibbet has to be the most impressive character in the history of Nightmare for one reason. He was in the series for all of about 2.5 minutes, and he still got a kill in during that time because he killed Simon.
50% kill rate, yeah.
Absolutely magnificent. Although it's a brief encounter, it's actually a pretty basic structured scene. The guard asks for a password. If you've got the password, you're allowed to pass. If you haven't, use some magic or an item.
Richard, say Cyclops.
Cyclops.
Password accepted. Pass, stranger.
Right, Richard.
But don't linger.
So Richard replies with Cyclops. It is the correct password. And Gibbet allows him through. So that can actually make Gibbet seem slightly feeble after such a violent introduction against Simon. But he does get a wonderfully psyche line in. Roll audio.
I may have let you go, but I don't have to like you.
I do love the way Alec Westwood delivers that line. It is so full of sort of Edinburgh toughness. I don't know if you've ever been, but when people talk in tough in Edinburgh, they really know how to sound tough. In Glasgow, people sound guttural when they're trying to sound tough. In Edinburgh, they sound tough. Richard gets some food off the well, puts it in his knapsack, and then we get probably the most important moment in all of season 1. We have a dungeoneer heading down a wellway to enter
level 3.
Where am I? You're in a large room with lots of skeletons about. There's a door on your left and there's one a bit to the right of it.
Warning, team. Cavern whites are common to all lower levels, but are endemic on level 3. These are the remains of their feastings. The whites were once human, but now have no sight, speech, or hearing. They find their prey by smell, and they're always hungry. I strongly suggest you keep on the move.
We have a dungeoneer who has the wits to complete 2 levels and enter the deepest, darkest depths of the dungeon. Richard is the very first dungeoneer to have witnessed the 3rd level. The thing I really, really like about the way they do it, to introduce level 3 to us, when Richard gets down the railway, we get the death anthem again from the first quest, and it's really the perfect place to use it. It really, really emphasizes the gloom and doom aspect of being in the 3rd level. Even the brighter architecture is just layered over with a sort of a veneer of gloom, and that is really amplified by having the death anthem being played over it.
For those who don't remember, the death anthem is basically a mournful, slow recording of the theme tune.
It's played at exactly the same register as dun 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 dun.
And this chamber really reflects the gloominess of level 3, doesn't it?
It just screams out, "Abandon hope, all ye who enter here." As Treguard himself says, at this point, every step spells danger. They've also, on this occasion, it doesn't happen very often, but this chamber is actually overlaid with extra skull effects that aren't normally in there. You've got all these bones, computer-generated bones, lying all over the place. And then at one point, just as Richard starts moving, one of them stands up!
You walk forward.
It's not as effective today as it was then. You're not going to jump out of your wits today.
More the surprise of it than anything else.
But it really did make me jump back in 1987. I always found level 3 absolutely terrifying when I was a kid. I'm sure listeners have noticed I'm capable of mocking absolutely anything in Nightmare, but level 3, I'm always really engrossed when I'm watching a Dungeoneer questing in level 3 throughout the first 3 seasons, less so later on.
There's not really any obstacles in this room, so to speak, other than the giant skeleton.
One thing I should say is you look at the size of that skeleton that stands up.
Yeah, it's huge, isn't it?
My goodness, Camelwites must be lethal if they can beat up on something that's about 4 times their height.
So the team guide Richard out of the room, but the way they do so kind of negates some of the effect of the actual chamber itself, because they make such a hash of just getting him through a bloody door. Listen out for how many times Jonathan needlessly says right in this clip.
Walk forward. Please stop. Stop. Right. Yeah, turn left, please. Right. Walk forward. Right, stop. Right, turn right. A bit. That's stop. Right, walk forward. Right, stop. Turn left. A little bit. And walk forward. Right, stop. Turn right. A bit. Oh, no, not as much. Left a little bit. Right, walk forward.
Where am I? You're in a big room. At the top of a flight of steps, there are 2 doors on your right, and there's a table with some objects on.
Right.
Yes, it's the dungeon architecture is becoming increasingly surreal and otherworldly now. There's a very powerful overtone of death everywhere they turn now, and more images of death.
Even in the more mundane chambers, such as the clue room, it's making its presence felt.
Yeah, it's grimier. There really is a feeling now that you'll be on reach, you'll be on help now.
Yeah, and every decision you make is life or death.
Yeah, no exceptions from here. I've mentioned before that I love the level 2 clue room, and of the 3 clue rooms, I think that's my favourite. But I will say again, the level 3 clue room is scarier. You do still feel a kind of doom there that you don't feel in either of the previous 2 clue rooms. Which is actually, it's kind of ironic that really, you think about it, because the only clue room that usually has a dangerous menace in it is the one in level 1 with the war monsters.
Yeah.
It feels almost slightly homely being in the level 1 clue room. You've got this nice table with this rather lovely coloured floor decorations with the sunlight beaming in through a window. Level 1 clue room, it could almost be your living room, couldn't it? There's a rather lovely ornate table in the middle of it with lots of lovely objects decorating it.
Someone refers to it as looking like a kitchen, don't they?
I think so. I think they do, yeah. Well, the dungeon does have a kitchen before we mock 2. So that's not a completely ludicrous idea. But it does seem very domesticated, the level 1 clue room. The level 2 clue room does not, and the level 3 clue room just screams out, there are dead bodies under the floorboards here.
Right. Can you see a table? Yeah. Right. What's that? A dagger.
Oh, grapes. Dagger.
What's that?
Sniff.
So on the table in the clue room are some grapes, a dagger, a horn, and a bottle marked sniff. Naturally, the grapes go straight into the knapsack. There's a brief discussion here, and eventually the team decide to take the bottle and the dagger.
What did you have to go into a thing like that for?
Isn't it actually written in the Adventurer's Code handbook that they would have been given at the start of the quest?
Beware the weapons of your enemies. Any weapons where there's nothing to indicate otherwise should always be assumed to be in that bracket.
I think at this point they've probably been filming for so long they just completely forgot.
Could be. As Traegard will point out later on, slight spoiler again, what is the point in taking a dagger when you're blindfolded? Unless it's a magic dagger. Magic daggers do get found occasionally in later seasons.
I just had this vision of a dungeoneer summoning a dragon Zord.
Side step to your left.
Ooh, nasty.
Well, there are 2 exits available. I've always rather liked the Nilrem marker that occasionally appears above one of the doors in this chamber. Merlin spelled backwards, yes, if anybody needed to know. It's pretty clear to me that Nilrem, in that respect, means Mogdred. Flip side of Merlin is Mogdred. If you head down that way, you'll be heading towards Mogdred. But they've been following the quest for the cup so far, and there is a cup symbol above the other door, so obviously that has to be the right way to go.
Turn right.
Right.
Right. That's it, walk forward. Right, left. Walk forward.
Go. Where am I? You're in a large cavern. There are 2 exits. One's blocked up with all
Dire
branches.
warning, team, just as I feared. Here be cavern wights. Remember, Richard, they can neither see nor hear you, but they're already beginning to sniff you out. Contact is deadly.
So here we see the cavern rights for the first time. Former humans that have mutated. They resemble a hairy version of the man's daddy from Digitizer and developed a taste for human flesh. Traegard reminds the team that they are blind and deaf, but their sense of smell is acute and all contact is deadly. Do you know what I'm talking about when I refer to the man's daddy?
Yes, I do. I remember.
You have to admit there's a resemblance.
There is. But what actually always goes through my mind whenever I see them, I'm not quite sure entirely why, is the word heffalump.
Heffalumps and woozles.
Yeah, that unclear entity from Winnie the Pooh. Those long drooping noses are supposed to emphasise what a powerful sense of smell they've got. To me, just make them look like anteaters. And the way their arms end in those strange sort of stump things, it sort of makes it look like elephants' feet. Why would they develop elephants' feet in place of hands? I don't get it. Surely, if when you're having to forage to survive, hands are going to be more useful than ever. Why would you devolve them into elephants' feet? It's inconsistent how they're portrayed as well, because as Traegard says here, they're blind and deaf. But in other episodes when they feature, they're just blind and you have to be quiet when they're sleeping because otherwise you'll wake them up. They do add a comic element to level 3 at exactly the point when they've just established level 3 through its architecture as something really terrifying. They would rather take you out of the game and back into the realm of carry-on dungeoneering or something.
I guess. It's nice to see a monster that isn't computer generated, though.
In this case, no. There is always this argument, especially today, between practical effects and CGI effects. When you can do either convincingly, you should always go with the practical effect. But where practical effects cannot produce a convincing image, and there's loads of things where they can't do that, you have to go with CGI, even though it will date, because otherwise it just looks ridiculous.
Yeah, I think the problem is that at this stage, if it was a hand-drawn image scanned into the computer, at this point they could only have like one on screen at a time.
Yeah, and there would have been great limitations on how they animated it. This is an example of Nightmare being ahead of its time. It was ahead of its time in a way that sometimes got in the way of itself. There were things that they were trying to represent that just couldn't be done back in the 1980s.
Richard, open the bottle of perfume.
Right, Richard, open the bottle of perfume. Not yet. Now, put the stopper back in. Right, now, take one step to the left. Right,
open it.
Right, take it off. Take the top off and put the bottle down on the floor.
Down,
quickly. Now walk forwards.
Anyway, the team tell Richard to open the bottle and place it down, thus attracting the cavern rights and allowing Richard to escape. And despite the team's panic, they managed to guide him out rather quickly this time.
Walk forward.
Keep going.
Quickly.
Run.
Forward.
Run.
That's it, you're all right now. Now turn right a little bit.
A little bit.
That's it, now walk forward.
Quickly. Where am I? You're in a large room with a portcullis-covered door, and there's a large blue face of a monster.
A dungeoneer! This is a hazard I hoped you would avoid. You've heard, no doubt, of people falling into a fit of deep despair. Well, I'm afraid you've fallen into a pit of deep despair. The cause is present. As the rest of the team can observe, it is a gargoyle, and if I might say so, a particularly ugly gargoyle at that. Gargoyles close doors to prevent visitors because they're ashamed of their appearance. Unless you can cheer him up, you'll perish here, for his gloom is draining your life force at an unnatural rate. All I can tell you is that his name is Mug.
Ugly Mug? That's what you mean.
And we get this rather Lovely scene on the other side of the door of the team desperately trying to cheer a gargoyle up.
I love this bit. I really do. It's so funny.
There are good bits and bad bits to it. I love the name Mug. You can really, really over pronounce it. Mug.
And who's voicing the gargoyle? Is it John Woodnut again?
No, I can't quite remember. I think it was Edmund Dane. On the issue of how they have to deal with the gargoyle, I actually do feel a bit sorry for the dungeoneer. And they have to tell this creature that they think it's the most beautiful entity they've ever seen. A bunch of 12-year-old schoolboys who've got to go back to school after their adventure is over. And they sit in class in front of their classmates, all glancing over the shoulder of them saying, "You said it was beautiful."
Why the advisor says, "You look better than me."
Well, you look better
You're
than
more
me.
handsome than anybody.
Which is rather hilarious, but all of them must have got the most horrendous ribbing at school in the months afterwards.
How many people went up to them and said, "Oh, you've got the most wonderful nose I've ever seen."
Best nose I've ever seen.
I feel so sorry for them. And that's the age when you least want to have to do that sort of thing. By the way, the hole in the bottom of Mug's lip, do you have any idea what it's supposed to be? Is it a wart or something?
Well, he's a gargoyle, so his purpose is to drain water.
Oh, is that what it's for? Oh, right, okay.
That's what I'm guessing anyway.
Yeah, that would make sense. Okay. Well, why doesn't he have it in subsequent appearances then?
And where would he be draining the water to?
That would actually make a more interesting threat, wouldn't it? What if water came out of the hole and started to flood the chamber while the dungeoneer's still in it? A more convincing threat than just the gargoyle's pessimism.
I think they probably took it out in later appearances just because they realised it looked a bit silly.
Yes, it does.
What about my eyes? Do you like the
They're
colour?
beautiful.
Yes,
a
right.
beautiful colour.
Oh,
I love that colour best.
I do feel good. And as they say, when you're feeling good, you're looking good. I think I'll have a party next week, just me and a few admirers. Oh, I'm ever so grateful to you, so I think I'll gift you a spell.
They succeed in cheering the gargoyle up, leading to him opening the door and gifting Richard the spell Opposite. The team guide Richard out.
It would have been interesting to know what the opposite spell was for.
Yep, but I don't think we're ever going to find out.
Where am I?
You're in the...
Warning team, life force energy very low.
You're in a large room with a wall in front of you. On the wall it says Jericho with the number 6. There's a door at the other side of the wall, but I can't see it much more.
What we come to in the next chamber, this is normally around the midway point of level 3. In seasons 2 and 3, this chamber features quite a bit. Sometimes it has this wall across it, sometimes it doesn't. This is the place where Merlin can be communicated with from level 3. Sometimes this wall with the Jericho 6 marker is across the middle of it, and it has to be removed before you can get to the table. There's usually some kind of talisman on the table that can be used for summoning Merlin.
So what does the Jericho 6 actually refer to? Is that a biblical reference?
It is. Jericho was the name of a city that was attacked by the Israelites on their journey to the Holy Land after escaping Egypt. Joshua was their leader at that point, and the myth has it somehow he blows this magic horn and the walls protecting the city of Jericho come tumbling down. And then the Israelites storm the city and basically commit genocide.
That's a nice thing to have in your kids' show, isn't it?
It is, but didn't take because I took a dagger instead.
Right, can you see a wall?
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you hold up the dagger?
Why are you carrying a weapon of so little use to one who's blindfold? Where is the horn to bring down the walls of Jericho? Oh dear, what a pity. Never mind.
This is probably Traegod's best and most disingenuous delivery of, "Oh dear, what a pity, never mind."
I found it a bit anticlimactic, them just dying.
Yeah.
Especially on the last episode. I can't help but think, as laughable as they were, maybe they could have like a cavern right approaching from behind or something.
Yes, I agree with that. We mentioned this when we were discussing the team from Wales. Have something appear in there, a monster, a ghost, anything, but have something appear in there that actually kills the dungeoneer off. Could that have been the final hurdle there, and they just missed out? We know for a fact that it wasn't, from following many of the similar scenes in the second and third seasons. Because everybody kept on dying and nobody has managed to conquer the dungeon yet, at this point you start thinking, is it unbeatable? Does it carry on forever? I do think it's a convention that was introduced over the next couple of seasons was teams that do really well, rather than being removed with a dismiss spell, Traeger would cast a spell like Unite to give them a little bit of dignity because they've done so well and come so close. So on this occasion, using the dismiss spell does seem very harsh.
Richard, it seems, has fallen at what may well have been the final hurdle. And now it's time for you to join him. Spellcasting. D-I-S-M-I-S-S. Hail, Richard, Jonathan, Edward, and Paul. The dungeon salutes you. This phase of the dungeon is now over, but it was you who came closest to victory. And so you are our champions.
Due to the team's blunder in choosing not to follow the adventurer's code, their quest ends here. Traegard dismisses the team, as we said, and they join Richard on the path home.
And Richard's team are declared champions of the first season as a tribute to getting the furthest of all 6 teams, but they're champions by default rather than champions by victory.
They still only get scrolls by the looks of it.
Yes.
Can I just point out, the lad on the far right, though, is absolutely happy as Larry.
They're a good team. Got to say this. They are just about the best team in season 1. I think Simon's team are a close second. They just got a rather weird brain freeze.
I disagree to an extent. I think Simon's team were the better team, and I think this team were very lucky.
There is that. I mean, we got to say it again. They practically got a free ride through level 2. I would certainly say that Simon is a better dungeoneer than Richard. He's quite assertive and he's quite a good talker. Richard is very definitely just an extension of the advisor's will. What I actually think would be a really good Yorkshire team would be these 3 advisors and Simon as the dungeoneer. I think that would be a very good combination because then you'd have a more assertive dungeoneer involved then.
So if you had to do a list of your favourite teams of the series, or if you had to put the teams in order, you would put this team at number 1 and Simon's at number 2.
Just about.
Number 3 for me, purely for entertainment value, would be Danny's team.
Yes. I think they've got to be number 3 anyway because they got quite close in the level 2. The big drag factor on Danny's team has to be advisor Mark. We've beaten up on him a bit now, so I won't go into too much detail. Next best was probably the Team 5 from Wales. I think they were very unlucky. Next best was Team 1 because at least they got more than halfway through level 1. And of course the worst team was Maeve's lot. What would be your team of season 1 in terms of which personnel from season 1 would you have on it? I'd say Simon would be our dungeoneer. I think we both agree with that, yeah?
Yeah, I agree with that. Simon would be the dungeoneer. I'd put Jonathan from Team 6, I think. For a manoeuvrer, I would have one of the advisors from Simon's team.
I would agree. I would go Jonathan from Simon's team.
Yes, I agree.
And Jonathan from Richard's team. Oh, Stephen, team 3 as well. Looking at the series as a whole, what was your favourite moment, would you say?
Oh, definitely the first time we saw the catacomb bite. The whole raw fish thing, for me, is just hilarious.
I think the first view of level 3, especially when the skeleton jumps up, that's a very good bit. What do we say about the insults duel?
I'm in 2 minds about the insult duel, because it was entertaining, I have to admit, but it was completely out of place and it slowed the program down to an absolute halt.
Another reason to dislike it is it's very clear that later scenes had to be cut to get the series down to size. It's not a favourite moment, and what's best about it is the potential it demonstrates.
So what was your least favourite, would you say?
I think it's in episode 2. We get, or it might have been episode 3, I can't remember which one, it's one or the other. We get the riddle contest rules twice in the space of about 10 minutes. First couple of quests are so wooden, as it were, and the repetition in it is one of the key indicators of it. And when we get the entire rundown of the riddle contest rules twice over in 10 minutes, and each time it gets repeated back by the dungeon master as well. I think it was episode 2. It really brings down the episode if you're going to do that.
My least favourite part is actually in episode 1, when they were told that it would have been enough to remember the talisman, because that's absolute bull. They wanted a quick quest for one episode just to say, this is the program, this is what happens, this is how you play, this is how you die.
You could argue that's one of the best bits about it, actually. It's certainly not. It's certainly one of a very unfair bit of season 1.
Okay, so we'll do the sign off then. If you like the podcast, you can follow us on Twitter. We're at NightmarePod, and if you want to email us, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us on broomcupboardclub@gmail.com. We're going to take a few weeks break, and in the meantime, we're going to bring you the Dunshelm Players in Famous for Retreating.
The original Nightmare audio play. Hard to believe it. We created that way back in 2005.
Yes, I wasn't even involved in that one.
No, you weren't. I think I'm the only one who was involved in the first one who's still around. We recorded that at the SAE Institute in Glasgow in 2005. Little secret we've kept quiet for a number of years. My brother, Russell, played Treguard in that play. He might still be taking part in future recordings if we ever get around to any. He actually wasn't with us in Glasgow. We actually recorded his lines separately somewhere else because he wasn't able to go to Glasgow. He was very happy with his performance because he actually had incredibly heavy flu. There was one occasion when he was recording. I was sitting opposite him feeding the lines. I'm sitting there playing Stiletta, for instance, in a high-pitched voice. And then he's responding in his Treguard voice, such as he very deliberately played Treguard as Russell Crowe for some reason.
There's me trying desperately to get the voice right for each character, and then there's him being Russell Crowe. It's brilliant.
Russell doesn't give a toss about that.
So anyway, yeah, you'll be able to hear Martin from next week in Famous for Retreating.
Oh, whilst we're on the subject of Twitter, anybody who hasn't listened to Famous for Retreating before, listen carefully to one of, I think it's Alita's lines. See if you can spot where the one of the actresses has been muddled up. I'm not going to explain how it happens, but one of the actresses delivers the wrong line, okay? And then when you find it, send your guess to us over Twitter. What was the address again?
It is at NightmarePod.
Yeah, that's the one. I was going to say that myself. So when you find the line which should have been delivered by somebody else, point it out to us. Let's see if who noticed it and who can't. You'll be able to hear me next week playing Lord Fear in Famous for Retreating.
And you'll hear me in a few weeks' time when we come back with Nightmare Series 2.
So, in the meantime...
Do have nightmares.
Because you can't watch them instead because the season's over.